Good evening, everyone, to the November 11th Veterans Day East Whiteland Township Supervisor meeting. We will start off with our traditional Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the
United States
of America
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a substantially jam-packed agenda for this evening, and tonight we may be having residents and presenters on the Zoom meeting call here. So for productive and orderly meeting's sake, here are a few rules that I ask you folks to follow. Please keep your computer muted until you're called upon. Participants are asked to identify themselves when being accepted into the meeting. For each agenda item that requires a board vote, the public will be given an opportunity to comment or ask questions. And Donna, if I fail to follow on that one, please just give me a nudge.
I think we're good.
And number 3 is let's try to have participants. I know it's difficult, but participants to speak one at a time. So we appreciate your cooperation on that. Today is November 11th, Veterans Day, when the nation honors America's courageous veterans for their service to the country. This year, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs has a theme called Vision, Veterans in Focus. All veterans, and I quote them, all veterans make a sacrifice to serve their country, whether physically, emotionally, or by being away from their loved ones and missing important life moments. We thank the veterans for their servitude to this country. Next up, our board briefings. Executive sessions were held on October 20th at 1 o'clock for personnel, and today, November 11th at 5 o'clock for legal, personnel, and real estate issues. Next on the agenda, Ted Locker will talk about some recent activity regarding our property maintenance codes. So Ted, if you could kind of give a brief update on that, we'd appreciate it.
Certainly. So going down the list, 55 Lancaster Avenue was noticed on a political sign violation. 261 Swedesford Road was notified of the violation of barking dogs. 23 Kelmar had been notified of junk and an accumulation of junk in a refrigerator left outdoors. That has been cleaned up. 3 and 5 Barber Drive, there was a property line dispute where the neighbor's driveway traversed the other neighbor's property line, and that's been taken care of along with Public Works. And I worked on that and we got that squared away. 585 Lancaster Avenue has been cited for exterior building maintenance, or lack of, I should say. 577 Lancaster Avenue has been cited for lack of building maintenance as well. 14 Prospect has had a complaint filed at the Common Pleas Court. 18 Prospect has been cited for abandoned vehicles. There's a trailer, somebody's living in a trailer on one of the lots owned by Philadelphia Suburban out on Yellow Springs Road. I was working with the police department and they are handling that. 1322 King Road, again, abandoned vehicles. They were sent notice of violation. 53 Village Drive. that seems to be one that's a steady complaint. I had another one today, and another notice of violation, another notice of violation went out today. And 25 Beechwood had been receiving notices for several years, and actually went out today, and the place is pretty well cleaned up. I've been working with the owner to try and get that done so we don't have to go to court next week. And that's the majority of the list right now.
Well, you've certainly been busy.
Under
Nick.
our ordinance, Ted, how long are political signs allowed to remain on a lawn?
7 days after the election.
That's it? Okay.
So that's a good technical question, I guess, as to when the election's over. Depending on who you are, some feel it's not over yet.
I think that our ordinance referred to the election date, or it's not, it doesn't even.
Specific. It's not specific.
No, okay.
So, I mean, generally it would be the election date.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
As my power just went down and I'm back. Next is public hearings that I'm going to turn over to Joe McGrory pertaining to the township ordinance bid and sale of the sewer system.
At this point, I'll open the public hearing, introduce the following exhibits. Board Exhibit 1 is the email to the newspaper dated November 2nd. Board Exhibit 2 is the proof of publication dated November 4th. Board Exhibit 3, the copy of the attested ordinance to the law library dated November 2nd. And the Board Exhibit 4 is the ordinance. Board Exhibit 5 is the legal notice. The ordinance before the board tonight authorizes the chairman, vice chair, or manager to execute all the documents to effectuate the sale of the sewer system, including assignments or whatever paperwork is necessary to effectuate the sale in accordance with the asset purchase agreement that was part of the bid. As part of tonight's presentation, I'll turn it over to PFM and Obermeyer to be followed by a presentation from Aqua. Is anyone from PFM on the line?
Yep. Thanks, Joe. This is Scott here, and Garrett's also on from PFM. Appreciate it. John Nagel, is someone able to pull up that presentation?
Sorry, I think, Donna, do we have that loaded up?
Yes, Zach's gonna share his screen. Takes a minute.
All right. Let's see. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So again, thanks everyone. This is Scott with PFM, and I'll introduce the rest of the team members here shortly. Zach, if you could go to the next page, please. So just kind of to start out, this obviously has been a process that was initiated, well over a year ago, and it's definitely a team effort. And so this page here just acknowledges kind of the key players and team members that were involved from the township side. So I won't necessarily name everybody here. You can kind of see from the township administration side, obviously John and Steve and John Neal and Zach and Brittany played very critical roles in this, getting everything together for us. A ton of due diligence that had to occur over the course of the year. Joe McGrory and his colleague obviously played a very instrumental part in this. The township's engineer, Chuck Faulkner from Panoni, Tom White and Kim Farmer from Obermeyer, and then the PFM crew here, myself and Garrett and a few other folks as well from PFM assisted in this. And I'm sure there's some, again, names on here that we might have accidentally left out, but definitely a team effort from the township. Next slide, please, Zach. So as far as the goals, again, this process started a little while ago, and sort of started with the notion of exiting the wastewater business, and instead, assuming the numbers work out, focus the township resources on other core government functions while still ensuring safe, reliable, and professional service And a very important point is at affordable rates for its residents. So as we were doing our due diligence, obviously looking at the system in consultation with the township engineer and other folks, there are some aging parts of the township system, which over time will require additional investment. Obviously, that additional investment for some of its aging infrastructure will come along with increasing rates as well if the township either kept the system or not. So, again, definitely capital is going to need to be put in. So if the township would decide to, hold on to the system, there would be an impact to the rates under that scenario as well. One of the other, goals that we see pretty common with other municipalities that are contemplating this is to generate upfront proceeds to be used for various purposes. And we have a slide in here in a few moments that we'll get to that lays out some potential ideas. But the key point is this evening is not the consideration or vote for the uses of those proceeds. There really will be, if the ordinance is approved tonight, there will be almost a year for many more discussions, public discussions on use of those proceeds. So what you're going to see tonight is just sort of the beginning of some ideas of a roadmap, but there will be a lot more vetting and public discussion as time goes on if the ordinance does pass this evening to effectuate a sale. Next slide, please. Zach, could you get the next slide? There we go. Thank you. So just a couple key key events that have transpired here. We'll get a little bit into more detail here. But first off, when this process started, the township had brought in some outside folks on the engineering side, financial and legal, to provide an overall objective assessment of this potential transaction. Then one of the kind of key milestone events was soliciting potential buyers and investors through an RFQ, or request for qualification, that we put together based on industry established criteria for the possible execution of this agreement. So once we got the RFQ out, we received some responses. Then 4 potential bidders were pre-qualified. It was a real good mix of bidders that we'll get into here a little bit, that all participated with the township team in a very rigorous vetting and kind of full disclosure and collaborative process that the township embarked on. Then an RFP or an RFB, request for bid, was issued, and those responses were due on October 13th of this year. So again, these are just a couple of the real highlight milestones. Zach, if you go to the next page, this just gets into a little bit more detail. So starting on the left-hand side, basically this started in the spring of 2019, this process. And then early last year in April, there was a public meeting for the board to authorize us to perform a valuation of the system. That occurred then in the summertime of 2019. Then around Labor Day, the board had another public meeting to approve phase 2 and phase 3 of our exploration process. And then you see in December where the RFQ was released, or we were authorized in December through a public meeting to release the RFQ. In late January of this year is when then we released RFQ, received the responses in February. There was, a little bit of a pause in the process just due to the pandemic, but then in mid-July, the township conducted some very important meetings with the bidders, what we call management meetings, and also asset tours to give all the bidders a chance to ask a lot more questions and come into town if need be. This one again was a little bit different, just given the pandemic circumstances. In August, a lot more due diligence again was conducted, and a lot more drafting of legal documents. And then in September of this year was another public meeting to release the RFB. And then again, we received the responses here just a few weeks ago, back in October. So again, just kind of highlight some of the main dates that were involved here so far. Next slide, please. So the document that governs this, I think Joe McGrory may have been talking about this right when we got on, is an asset purchase agreement. So there's a lot of business terms and legal provisions built into that agreement, which basically guides the transaction. But basically it can be kind of summarized at a very high level with these points, that the sanitary sewer system and the related equipment of that system would be sold to the buyer. Basically, service would continue as usual, only under different ownership. No employees would lose their jobs. They will stay with the township and be reassigned within the Public Works Department. An important part here, the township will maintain control of its Act 537 planning. We can get into that a little bit more, but that's kind of very important, where the township does keep control of that document and the overall planning. The rates will be governed by the PUC, the Pennsylvania Utilities Commission, after the mandatory 3-year rate freeze, assuming the buyer is a regulated utility. And you'll see here shortly that we did have a very good bid from a regulated utility. Zach, next slide, please. So as far as rates go, what's built into the document is that the buyer will initially adopt the township's current rates. Again, the Pennsylvania Public Utilities Commission, or the PUC, will ultimately set the rates if a regulated utility is selected as the buyer. Again, there will be a 3-year mandatory rate freeze that's built into the agreement. And then just to get everyone reacclimated again, right now the township bills its customers those various ways, 6 different ways outlined below, that you can kind of see what the average rate is, kind of ranging from $400 on average per year up through those different sewer districts. Next slide, please. So as far as the proposals that we received, so Aqua is a regulated utility, regulated by the PUC. Again, bid on the 3-year rate freeze, which was in the document. The bid price was $54,930,000. So that obviously is a binding number, that purchase price, which we asked for through the RFP process. Another thing that was also requested in the RFP was a table of indicative rates. Now, ultimately, again, the rates will be set by the PUC, kind of a very robust process for a regulated utility like Aqua to go through to get rates approved in the future. These, again, are just indicative or estimated rates based on the modeling that was done. But again, we wanted to give everyone an illustration of what it could look like. This is probably more of a conservative case, I would say, but we can let some of the folks from Aqua speak to that at the appropriate time. But this is broken down on a monthly basis. So you can see the first couple of years is basically what it currently is for township residents. If you break it down per month, about $36. And then again, based on the calculations that were done with Aqua, you can see what the hypothetical rate trajectory might look like under this scenario. So next slide, please. We did receive another bid from Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority. So this is a municipal authority. Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority is not regulated by the PUC. It's just regulated or governed by the Municipal Authorities Act. Again, they bid on the 3-year rate freeze, which was the only option, and their purchase price was $20 million. And again, we asked for the indicative rates, and you can see what the response we received from them. Again, the rates would be basically where they are now on a monthly basis. And then you see they jump up to about $48 thereafter. Next slide, please. So there were 2 other bidders involved in the due diligence process. Pennsylvania American Water was another one of those regulated utilities that was involved. They had declined to respond. They were very engaged throughout the process. With the due date of the RFP is when we were notified that they were not going to be bidding for their own reasons. And then the next slide, Zach. Another entity that was involved, they were looking at a slightly different kind of transaction. It was a kind of a conglomeration of a few different companies, Vico and the Carlyle Group, basically an infrastructure fund or private equity firm, and ultimately they decided not to respond as well. But again, very engaged throughout the process, and basically the day or so before is when we were notified that they were not going to respond. So again, 4 bidders were involved in the process. They were pre-qualified back in the early part of the exploration process. The bids that were received, Aqua, a regulated utility, you saw their purchase price of just a little under 55 million, and Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, again, a municipal authority, their bid of $20 million. Zach, next slide, please. So one thing we just wanted to kind of illustrate at a high level is if this transaction moves forward, this just gives you a quick illustration of the net proceeds that could be available for use at closing. And so on the left-hand side, we start with, again, just a little under $55 million from the purchase price. There's some sewer cash on hand that has accumulated over time, about $9 million, and that's going to fluctuate until closing occurs. So that gets us to total sources of between $63 and $64 million at closing. Some of the debt will be required to be paid off, so about $15 million. There'll be some transaction fees and other contingency related items that we have in there estimated at $1 million. There could be some money set aside potentially for a real estate escrow, but it's too early to tell at this point. I highly doubt there will need to be any. So at closing, about $16 million will be utilized for those various purposes, which will leave the township about $48 million that you see at the bottom of this page to ultimately, again, be able to be used and redeployed within the township. Next slide, please. So some possible uses of those proceeds. Again, there'll be plenty of time, almost a year, for a lot more discussions on potential purposes or potential uses of these proceeds. One of those may be reducing debt. We have to pay off sewer debt, but there may be some other debt that could look to pay off. Fund development of township campus, preserve open space, improve add to township parks and trails, implement roadway projects to improve traffic flow and maintain selected historical resources. So again, this is not necessarily an all-inclusive list. It's just kind of where we are at this point, but a lot more to come over time if the transaction is approved this evening. Next slide, please. So estimated closing timeline. Prior to closing, an application must be filed with the Pennsylvania PUC if Aqua is the chosen one. The township then is required to engage a few other folks to move forward with some other assessment reports and evaluation reports that would occur kind of in the first 90 days here if this is approved. Then the point below there, should the township decide to approve the sale tonight with Aqua, settlement would likely occur in the latter part of 2021. We're probably estimating the fourth quarter of 2021. If Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority would be selected, a faster closing could occur just because there's no PUC involvement at that point. And then, again, you kind of see some of those milestone dates moving forward. This evening, November 11th, is our public presentation and the consideration of an ordinance for the sale of the sewer system. And then if that is approved this evening, basically the next 3 months or so would be doing some various studies that would be involved that would ultimately have to be filed with the PUC. And then we see the March through November, the PUC process, a lot of other documentation is going to need to be done, and then ultimately closing occurring in late 2021. Next slide, please. So as a wrap up, the township, you saw, began this process a little while ago to do a very thorough exploration and vetting of the potential sale of the system to determine the potential benefits that the residents could experience from the sale of the system. Realizing there's basically a $55 million purchase price, many or all of the township goals could be accomplished with that bid from Aqua. Some of the key components, again, that we've already mentioned, and you'll hear from Aqua here shortly, but the system would be sold to an experienced local operator that will be heavily regulated by the Pennsylvania PUC, and they can speak a little bit more about that. Future rates will be set by the PUC. Aqua already provides water service to large portions of the township, so there'll obviously be some synergies with having them be both the water provider and the wastewater provider. And then ultimately, the funds, after a lot more due diligence, the funds will be used to benefit the residents of the township over the long term. So those are, kind of some of the main points that the township team wanted to go through this evening. And so with that, I think we will now turn this over to the Aqua team to do a brief presentation as well.
Thank you, Scott. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Mark Luca. I am the president of Aqua Pennsylvania. And on behalf of Aqua Pennsylvania, we are very pleased to be here tonight to share with you some of our experiences, knowledge of Aqua. I think many of you probably know who we are, so we won't spend a lot of time on that, but we will speak with you about our proposal and certainly be happy to answer any questions you may have. With me here tonight is Bill Packer. Bill is the Vice President of Rates and Regulatory Accounting. We'll be able to answer any questions and speak to you about the rates and how our proposal would be affected and affect rates. We have Mark Bubel, is a professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania, project engineer, worked on the due diligence of this proposal. And last but not least, we have Tom Rafferty. Tom is Director of Business Development and has been essentially the face on this acquisition for us. And at this point, I will hand it over to Tom, and at the end, I'll come back and visit with you again. Tom, you want to take it over for us, please?
Yes, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Tom.
Yep. You're fine,
Thanks.
Tom.
Zach, if you don't mind, could you go to slide 3 for us, please? Here you go. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, and thanks again to the board, staff, and residents for taking the time to listen to our presentation. We're just going to provide a general overview of Aqua and highlight some specific areas of interest that we think would be beneficial to the supervisors and the residents. Next slide, Zach. This is our Aqua Pennsylvania service territory, heavily located in southeastern PA, because that's where we're born from, I guess. We provide service in 32 counties in the Commonwealth. Pennsylvania-based company. Our corporate headquarters are located in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. And in that southeast PA territory, we continue to expand our ownership of the surrounding municipalities. 2018 with the acquisition of Limerick, in 2019 the acquisition of Cheltenham collection system, and in 2020 East Norriton collection system in Montgomery County, and then most notably to the folks on the call here and within the township, the Valley Creek trunk sewer line in 2019 as well. Next slide, please, Zach. Thank you. Aqua Pennsylvania at a glance. This is really a kind of a snapshot of the size and the structure and capability of Aqua. And I'll point out our water connections and our wastewater connections at the top on each. 443,000 connections serving approximately 1.3 million people in Pennsylvania on the water side, and on the wastewater side, 43,000 connections. And that little parentheses underneath, that'll continue to grow with some additional closings at the end of this year and into 2021. We expect to close the New Garden wastewater system in Chester County at the end of this year, and also Delcora and Lower Makefield in 2021. And that's going to add about 210,000 EDUs to that wastewater number. And it's very important to the East Whiteland residents because of the larger customer base that you'll be part of. And it's, so when rates are impacted, it's spread over a much larger customer base, which is a benefit to the residents in East Whiteland. And also, with a lot of the numbers and symbols on the slide, it's saying a lot, but what that really translates into is economies of scale. And being in East Whiteland already, It's a great benefit to Aqua and to the township, and it allows us to focus our strength into operating and managing your wastewater system more effectively. Next slide, Zach. And to elaborate on that further, what you get with Aqua Pennsylvania, pretty much 5 core areas of our operations on the left there. We are a best-in-class, publicly regulated utility that has been in business for over 130 years. Water and wastewater is really all we do. It is our core mission, and we execute our mission by providing 24/7 customer service, continuous system maintenance, emergency preparedness, and response. On the capital side, the middle column there, and we'll talk about that more in depth later, but we have a significant capital program that puts hundreds of millions of dollars to work every year to maintain and continue our strong compliance. And on the regulatory side, we also collaborate and work well with the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission, exceeding all regulatory and environmental standards. Next slide, please. Switching to customer service and care, obviously that is a primary focus of our business day in and day out. And we accomplish that by providing an operations center or a control center in Bryn Mawr, which is staffed around the clock. So if there are emergencies in East Whiteland on the wastewater side, as there are on the water side, after hours, you're calling Bryn Mawr, you get a live person, and we expedite the resources needed to take care of the emergency. We have, again, mentioned 24/7, 365 US-based customer service, and that is reviewed annually by the Public Utilities Commission. For convenience, for bill pay and so forth, we do have convenient bill pay options, and that includes the typical stuff you see on, apps on the phone and so forth, for all your other utilities, online account access, daily balance access, and reminders and so forth. And we just want to mention, we also have a Helping Hands program for those who are having, need financial assistance or have encountered financial difficulties. And finally, on this slide, I think it's important to mention that we have an extensive data management system that protects customer information. So we're never very cognizant of that as well. And on the next slide, keeping the focus on customer service, this is a good slide for us to talk about and brag about. It is the J.D. Power 2020 Water Utility Residential Survey. And what that is, that company that y'all hear about rating car services and so forth. Well, they do the same. They've been doing this for the last 3 years in the water and wastewater utility. And what they do is they looked at 88 different water and wastewater utilities, and they survey their actual customers, and it's based on, delivery and billing and payment and so forth. And it's the customer experience that they're really looking at. And, based on their most recent study, according to J.D. Power, Aqua is the top rated publicly regulated utility by customer satisfaction in Pennsylvania. So we're showing you this because we want you to know, we care about the customers in East Whiteland on the water side, and we're going to provide the same top-notch customer service on the wastewater side as well. Next slide, please. And obviously, emergency response, critical to providing safe and reliable wastewater service. So when emergencies happen, we respond quickly. And I'm sure some in the room recall in 2014, the Valley Creek trunk sewer line, which broke in the Valley Forge National Park. When that occurred, it wasn't our pipeline. We did not own it, but we were on the scene regardless, and we were assisting, that effort, pumping raw sewage out of the creek. And now that we own it, we have an extensive, capital investment and pipe replacement program, and that's exactly how you prevent scenes like these pictures here that we're showing. So, very important to us, and you can be assured that this is how we'll respond all the time. Also wanted to note that in Pennsylvania, most pipe, water and sewer pipe, and throughout the entire state, it's approximately 70 to 100 years old, sometimes more than 100 years old. And in Aqua, Pennsylvania, the Southeast Pennsylvania region, our pipe is no older than 1971. So with that aggressive pipe replacement program, we're ahead of the game on making sure these types of main breaks and so forth do not happen. Next slide. We know that environmental and regulatory responsibilities can be an administrative burden to municipalities, and maybe one of the reasons why you guys are looking to sell in the beginning. Post-acquisition, Aqua will take on the following duties. We will meet environmental permit obligations of the sewer system with local, state, and federal agencies. We'll negotiate permits and agreements with DEP. We'll meet with DEP in regards to any consent orders or corrective action plans and so forth. I believe Scott mentioned that the Act 537 plan does remain with the township, so that's a good thing. As part of the acquisition, the application process will assist the township in the Act 537 special study that is required, but ultimately the 537 plan stays with the township. And finally, on this slide, I'd just like to point out that Aqua will take care of filing the PUC application for acquisition and final approval. Next slide, please. Now, switching gears to capital investment, I mentioned this earlier, our kind of a larger scale, bigger picture of what our capital investment program is. We do a 5-year, a 10-year, and a 15-year planning look ahead. In the last 10 years, we spent over $2 billion on capital upgrades. That's with a B. Each expense is scrutinized by the PUC prior to any rate case for its prudency and merit, and that guards against any overspending and maximizes efficiencies. And the ultimate goal, again, is keeping costs low and minimizing the impact on rates. And specifically in East Whiteland, our capital plan estimates that we'll spend $19 million over the first 10-year period after ownership. Obviously, that takes a little bit of time once we get in and own it before those dollars get put to work. Specifically, we know that there were a few projects that the township was concerned about and put those projects in the RFB or in the APA. And we've addressed those in our capital plan. We want to let you guys know that within that $19 million are the 3 projects that you mentioned through the RFB process. And if you have any other questions on those projects after we're done our presentation, please feel free to ask. Okay. And next slide. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Bill Packer to talk about our rate process. And then after Bill speaks, it'll go over to Mark, who will close out our presentation. Thank you. Bill.
Thanks, Tom. Township Supervisors, pleasure to be here. Good evening. My name is Bill Packer. I'm the Vice President Controller. When it comes to the rate cases of the company, I serve as a Chief Accounting Witness and file rate cases. And in regards to the application for fair market value of the PUC, I also preside as the chief witness for the company in all of our fair market value deals. When it comes to rates, I don't think it's any surprise, when you look at the investment that we're making in East Whiteland, $55 million, and a continued investment of $20 million over the first 10 years, it's not unsurprising that rates would naturally go up. Just about every muni that we deal with has a situation that not only would rates be going up under their ownership themselves if they kept the transaction, but also under a sale otherwise. Obviously in a fair market value process, this works out for both sides because of the company's size and scale and our economies that we can bring. When it comes to rates, as a monopoly, we have to file what's called a base rate case to increase rates. We typically do this on consistent intervals. I would submit to you that we'd be doing this every 3 years. Our last rate case was approved in April, actually went effective in May of 2019. And we'll be coming up shortly in 2021 with our next filing, and it'll pretty much happen every 3 years thereafter. We are heavily regulated. So there's plenty of parties who are participants in our rate case, notably the PUC themselves, the Consumer Advocate, the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement, and small business advocates. It's important to note that when the deal closes, after assuming the PUC approves it in the public interest and it closes, we start off by adopting the township's current rates. The current rates that you have memorialized by ordinance will become part of the company's tariff. And we can't change those rates until such time as we have a base rate case. That doesn't take into account the intermittent surcharges we are able to institute, which is called the Distribution System Improvement Charge, which is a automatic quarterly increase to handle certain pipe replacement activities that occur in a community up to a level of about 5%. But those are gradual, and it doesn't go from 0 to 5. It's just promotes and allows the company to invest and recover pipe replacement work in your system on a more timely basis than a base rate case. The process takes about 9 months when we file a rate case. There are plenty of public hearings to which customers and other interested parties can represent their interests. And notably, one of the biggest parts of the rate proceedings is really the discussion on rates and really the ability of the company to spread those rate increases over its large customer base, which includes 450,000 water customers, as well as an increasing wastewater presence, which is right now is around 43,000 and growing on wastewater. So it's a robust process with lots of input, and the company has experience in this, and it's something that we do on a routine basis, as well as investing capital in the interest of our customers in a reliable system. Tom?
Thank you, Bill. Zach, next slide, please. And I believe we're going to close out with Mark's comments on this slide.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Bill. Yes, I think this slide really summarizes what you just heard, and I won't read it to you, but I will walk through it because I think it bears mentioning some of the benefits that partnership with Aqua would bring. Certainly, we would finalize the asset purchase agreement that, if awarded the acquisition, that would be the next step. That is to sign an agreement that would essentially be the starting point for transfer of assets to Aqua. That would initiate what will turn out to be about a 12-month process, during which time we will prepare the application, collaborate through public meetings with the township if so desired, and really work on the integration process. The conclusion of that process would hopefully end with the Public Utilities Commission agreeing that there would be a public benefit for the transaction, and that at the end of that, we would conclude with the signing of a deal to close the transaction and then transfer the funds that were discussed earlier. At the bottom there, you can see it discusses some of the other benefits. I think you know us. It's not necessary to go through them, but we are a leader in the water and wastewater business, certainly growing in the wastewater business in southeastern Pennsylvania, which I think adds to our depth and certainly skills with the addition of many of the systems that we've acquired and are acquiring. And I think you can feel confident that the price paid will be a fair market value, and that any of the rate impacts going forward could only be approved by the Public Utilities Commission after a very lengthy process that Bill Packer had mentioned. So with that, I believe concludes our presentation, and we'll hand it back to the supervisors. And if you are ready, we are ready for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Well, at this point, does anyone on the board have any questions?
I just have one question. It's Rich Orlow. In your experience, has the PUC ever rejected a proposed acquisition?
Mr. Packer, why don't you take that for us, would you please?
Happy to say they have not. I think we have put together some really good applications and working with the communities that have decided to sell. Some are a little bit more controversial than others, to be fair, right? But none of them are easy, I would say. But heretofore, we have been successful in all of our transactions, getting them to closing. We do have one out there. I will note, probably folks know, the very first fair market value deal was New Garden. And that was, we knew that one was going to be a landmark application. And that will be closing soon, I'm happy to say, after about 4 years of controversy and sorting out some things, because it was the first one, and the first one of fair market value always is going to have some problems. But happy to say we're working those out and expect to close on that really soon. So yeah, none's been rejected.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. If you can answer it, do you have any? Are you in negotiation with any of our neighboring townships?
As a matter of fact, we are in process right now talking to Willistown, and that's very active and very public. I think anything beyond that would be premature to put into the category of responding to the question that you've asked, but certainly Willistown is very public.
Okay, thank you. I had another more detailed question on the rates, the discussion of a quarterly surcharge. I mean, we're looking at a 3-year rate freeze, but then this quarterly surcharge came up. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's unlikely, given the timing of the company's base rate case, that the quarterly surcharge would be in effect prior to, call it what I think is the 3-year rate freeze. We're looking at our first base rate case for this system being included in 2025.
Okay,
We do have the ability to file for a distribution system improvement charge. I have incorporated, I think the rates that were shown by PFM did show, I think, a increase sometime in 2023, if I'm right, Scott, for a 2.5% disc surcharge. But put that in there for demonstration purposes. It's not certain as we sit here today that would be in place at that time. But I wanted to be fair and make sure that I showed that potential impact.
okay, thank you.
Bill, this is Scott Lambert. Along that same line, on that quarterly surcharge, with a maximum of 5%, do you have an aggregate maximum allowable increase for a 12-month period with that pipe surcharge?
Yeah, it's 5% on the customer bill between rate cases. So if we're on a 3-year rate cycle, typically you will not have any disc in year one, any surcharge in year one, right? And then you basically have 2 years before the next time you increase base rates to utilize that disc surcharge. And it would go on an upward trend of 0 to up to 5%, but 5% being the max, right? But you're never going to get the 5% in one quarter, right? It takes probably 6 to 8 quarters to have that surcharge build up to 5%. And it's simply just whatever the percentage is in effect at that time, multiplied by the monthly bill, right, to come up with the surcharge impact.
And Bill, if I could jump in here, would you explain what happens when you go into a rate case to that surcharge?
Sure. When you have a disc surcharge in effect, essentially when you go in for a rate case, the surcharge doesn't get, if you will, counted twice. It's called what I call rolled into base rates, right? So to the extent that you have a disc surcharge in effect prior to 2025, it would otherwise, lower the increase, right? The percentage increase in that rate case. That's the whole point of a disc, is to allow a company to invest incrementally leading up to a rate case. You start charging that a little bit in advance, up to 5%, and then that 5% is not counted, if you will. It's already in the bill, so there's not an additional, if you will, on top of that 5% that's added onto your otherwise calculated rate increase. So it helps promote gradualism, essentially. Gradually increase rates over a longer period of time so you don't end up with what the PUC doesn't like, which is rate shock.
All right.
Now, as for you're going to take on 2 of the projects that we were planning to do, and I think we're in agreement on this, but just for the public, the Backton Hill and the Plainbrook Road, you are going to do those projects on a reasonable time schedule. I don't remember exactly what the wording was, but that's correct, right? So they will happen.
That's correct. That's part of our capital program, those 2 projects.
Right, thank you.
And I think they're supposed to be done within a year after settlement.
Yeah, Joe, that is something that we'll talk to you guys about, because I think within a year, having those 2 projects, I don't know if Mark Bubel is on to speak more about this, but as far as planning, permitting, construction within a year is kind of a stretch. So, but again, they're in our plan. It's like as Susan said, within a reasonable time, we expect to have them done.
That's correct, Tom. This is Mark. We know that they're important projects for the township, and we're certainly going to prioritize getting those projects done.
Well, I think we need a drop dead date in writing.
Well, if you start the planning and permitting now with the cooperation of the township, the construction won't take long on those projects. So I think 1 year from settlement is very doable if you start the process now.
It's certainly something we can definitely take a look at. I agree.
And Tom Wyatt, don't we have 1 year built into the APA?
We do, yes.
So to confirm, Backton Hill and Plainbrook projects will be completed 1 year from the closure of the bid.
Yeah, I don't know the status of those. I'm going to defer to Mark. And I've built a lot of projects in my career. I have almost 30 years of experience in building projects and designing them. I just simply don't know the status, but what I do know is that the DEP will take every bit of 6 months just to get you a permit. So if that hasn't been started, I know that will add and significantly eat into the 12-month time frame you're talking about. Now, as Mr. McGrory said, if a lot of that work is done up front, if the design is finished, if permits are secured, well, that certainly moves along the continuum of project from start to finish. And so what I'll do is I'll ask Mark Bubel, who may be more experienced or knowledgeable about the status of the project or projects in this case.
Yeah, so I believe Pannoni Associates did have plans, semi-prepared in this regard, which certainly, gets us ahead of the curve in terms of getting the projects done. So I don't disagree that, we may be able to get the projects done, within that 1 year time frame. I always hesitate kind of making promises, as Mark pointed out, not knowing, how quickly DEP is going to permit, these endeavors. I don't want to make promises that, are kind of relying on other parties to, to fulfill obligations that, or that affects, us getting a project done. So we're gonna, as I said, we're gonna do all that we can. We endeavor to, to get those projects done, within the 1 year time frame, as you guys asked. But again, some of the part of this is out of, with parties, I guess, out of our control. Simply speaking.
Well, it's 1 year after settlement, so we really have 2 years to work with.
Right.
And the township can work with you pre-settlement to get you whatever information you need to get it done.
And we appreciate that, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, that's a good point. 1 year from settlement, the settlement's out, 9 to 12 months out. So we're looking at roughly a 2 year period.
Right. Yeah, and I think provided the project has moved along, if the township has moved along through, say, final design, as Mark suggested, he didn't say final design, but certainly that matters. Then, we're talking about a 2 year time frame from, say, final design. If the design's not done or doesn't move along until after close, then it leaves 12 months to get something done. And I can guarantee you that it will take 6 months just to get a permit. So I sitting here tonight, I don't know where it is in the continuum. I don't know the status of the design plans or the work that's going to be done by the township between now and the end that we close. But as long as we work together on it, there's no reason that we won't be able to bring it out of the ground in the time frame that you requested. But again, it really depends on how much progress has been made and will be made through closing.
That's right.
Okay.
The board have any more questions?
Yeah, so it sounds like if the transaction is approved tonight, the two teams will work together very closely, pre-closing to get that expedited as much as possible.
That's right, Scott.
Yeah, and I'll step out here and Tom will jump in, but Actually, Tom, why don't you talk about what typically happens after we sign an asset purchase agreement? I mean, there are weekly meetings, and I think it's good for people to hear about that.
Sure. For the township, just so you know, once an asset purchase agreement is signed, the two teams, I would guess them call them working teams, and Joe and Tom from the township side, you're very aware of this from other deals, but we do have weekly calls. The first thing we do is choose the engineering firm that will conduct the assessment. We provide a checklist to the township for all the data that we'll need that will go into the eventual PUC application. So it's a weekly working session, I would call it. So you guys can be confident that we'd be discussing the projects such as these on a weekly basis. Once the engineering assessment is done, we hand those over to our chosen utility evaluation engineers. And when they complete their evaluation, we're pretty much ready to file the application. And again, throughout the entire process, which is lengthy, all the way up until the time of closing, we're talking on a weekly basis. So again, as this moves forward, we'll be talking about these projects as well.
Yeah, we work very closely to try and get this through the PUC process as a team effort. And by the way, Tom, we've been working on a year gathering up easements. So we're in great shape for easements. So I think we only have about 20 that we're looking for at this point.
Yeah, I saw that in the data room and the schedules.
So what Mr. McGrory just said was code for some of the delays that those of us more experienced in this process really understand. Things like permit transfers, things like easements, things like designs that must be done in order to accommodate post-close commitments. All those things are critical. So Joe, I really appreciate that because, as you know, that's a place where we sometimes collectively see contributing delay factors. So thank you very much for that.
One other thing that hasn't been mentioned, as tied into this agreement, the township will not lose any of its employees to Aqua. We will retain all of our employees.
That's right. Correct.
Yeah, Rich, if I could just add, that was one of our main goals from the beginning. We have a small but very agile workforce, and they'll be reassigned within the Public Works Department because we have many more things like stormwater that really needs attention over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, that's helpful to know. I think it's either way, it'll work. We'll make the commitment to bring on employees where that's a requirement. In this case, that's not the requirement, and we're certainly happy to fulfill, the requirements of ownership and operation. Not a problem at all.
Okay, does the board have any other questions before we open it up to the public?
No more questions.
I have none.
I do not have any more questions.
All right, at this point, why don't we open it up to the public for their comment? The public needs to raise their hand to be recognized and let into the meeting. Don, do you see anyone raising their hands?
I don't, but I do know that one person on there does want to say something. Oh, I do see somebody. Yes, it's Ray Braun. I'm going to unmute him. Okay, he's on.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for letting me share with you at least a thought. I live on Plainbrook Road, and this sewer project has been a tremendous disappointment over probably the last 10 years that we've attended meetings and talked about, the improvements and where we are. And I'm sad to say the last number of years I've been traveling, so I haven't been able to make any of the preliminary meetings, and I guess I wish I had. Talking to Public Works, the thought was that this was on schedule for next summer. I can't wait to take a shower. For the years that we've not been able to. And then the disappointment of tonight is the company that's bidding on this and talking now about 2 years out, just isn't up on where you are on permits or where we are in the process of it. And talking about, again, it's hard to make I think the one gentleman made the comment tonight, it's hard to make a promise. And we've had so many promises broken, and now you're going to enter into another agreement where the company that's looking to buy it says it's hard to make a promise. And I guess I just share with you our frustration that those of us that live here, and I was with one neighbor the other, or I guess about 2 days ago, who asked me, "Did you hear anything about the sewer yet?" So I guess that's my comments. How disappointing that this process has taken so long. I just learned about this process. By the way, Donna, thank you for cluing me in on how to do this tonight. And John, thank you for your words from, about the project a day or so ago. But to you guys, disappointing. I'm happy that the township has the opportunity to make $54 million on this project. But it is so sad that all these years that we had hoped for sewer lines, and I watch all the new buildings back on the Cockerham line go up, and I'm watching 500 or so apartments go up at Plainbrook and 30. And here we are, been residents here for how long? And we can't get hooked up to a sewer line. So I guess I just share with you my disappointment. And I guess I would urge you, if the township could do it next summer, vote against this and let it come up for bid after the two projects that are key to be done are done. Guys, thanks for your time.
Did anyone else raise their hand, Donna?
Joe, to answer or to address Ray's question about the time frame, the township would encounter some of the same delays as Aqua in this process. Correct? And so,
Yes.
so in terms of the additional time frame, it may not be as, if we followed what Ray is asking for, there would be a delay for him to get tied into the sewer system regardless. But I don't know exactly the time frame at this point in time.
If I can, talking to Public Works, their point was they thought it was on schedule for this coming summer, not 2 years out. They were very kind to me and what great people we have on our township staff, that it would be extended out an extra year because of the purchase.
Well, the best we can do and what we will do is we will be able to pick up sooner rather than later the permitting and design, so we lose as little time as possible.
Yeah, again, I think this will be the number one topic in our weekly calls to make sure that stays on an expedited time track if this is approved this evening.
Yeah, and just to help Mr. Braun a little bit, because I hear in his voice the sincerity of his comments. We as we acquire systems, Mr. Braun, we're used to taking projects at various stages of completion. Sometimes they're not designed, sometimes they're under construction, and in such cases we would take them on. So we will work, as Mr. Shearer just said, with the township to complete the projects, whatever stage we get them, and to do them as quickly as possible. Please rest assured of that. And supervisors, rest assured of our commitment on behalf of Aqua Pennsylvania that I make to you, that when the project comes to us, we will move as quickly as we possibly can to execute. Hopefully that helps you a little bit, Mr. Braun.
If I can ask one more question of our supervisors, is it possible that the township would continue the process so that when it is handed over, we're even further along? So that, the permitting process, that we don't stop everything now waiting for the settlement, so that the township keeps moving forward, so that maybe when the settlement happens, we're shovel ready.
I would hope we would do that.
Absolutely. That would be the intent.
Absolutely.
Yep. I think that's the point of the collaboration between both teams to, after signing of the asset purchase agreement, would be to collaborate on that to keep things moving.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate all the things you do. Thank you for being there.
Yeah. The other point, Ray, is keep in mind that we've really done a lot of work on the front end, more so than Aqua has typically seen in this process. So going into this, we're well ahead of a standard situation.
And I trust that, and I believe you. So thanks for doing it.
We did make a point of making sure that the projects that we had promised people were in this agreement. So if we can do it in less than a year after closing, I'd be thrilled. Okay?
Well, but the township's going to do their best effort to expedite the project as much as possible.
Yes.
Okay, looks like we have another comment. Barbara Ann has a comment. I'm going to let her in.
Thank you, Donna. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I guess I must have missed something earlier, but I thought that there were two bids presented. Has it been fully decided that the Aqua bid is the bid that the township is going with? That's my first question.
The way the ordinance is drafted, it's to approve the Aqua bid, but until the board votes, it's up to the board whether they want to accept a $54 million bid or a $20 million bid.
Okay. And the next question that I have is, I live on Broadleaf Trail, which is a private HOA. I'm wondering if sewer work needs to be done, how after this deal or they deal with the other bidder goes through, how would that work for our streets that are part of our HOA in terms of working with a company like Aqua or Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority? How would that look different for us versus how it might look today with the township? And or would the township still be involved with things like that for work that might need to occur? That's my second question.
Well, Aqua will decide what improvements they have to put into the system, and they have a very high standard with that. So it's really going to be their call after they purchase the system.
So, Joe, with all due respect, can I hear from Aqua or maybe the township regarding that question?
Yeah.
You can. Does anyone disagree with that statement?
No, it's going to be Aqua's system, so they will make the decisions. The township won't be involved.
Okay, so my next question is related to once Aqua might have to do work on the roads, resulting in digging up roads and semi-repaving them. After work has been done like that recently in our area, the township has done the paving to bring the roads back to the way they were prior to the Aqua work. What will happen in this case in regards to wastewater work?
They would be treated the same as any other public utility. We have standards for road openings and they would have to comply with them.
Okay, and then this next statement, it's or a question or statement is for the supervisors, just in terms of that slide that was shown by the first gentleman that spoke, that shows about the potential for how the revenue from this could potentially go back into the township. Would the supervisors consider somehow being able to offset some of those funds to go actually back to residents to help defer the potential increase in cost for the sewer projects or the monthly or quarterly sewer rates down the road? That might be something to consider, or even for hardships for residents that might have them. And then this is a question for Aqua. As an Aqua customer now, will I get one bill with sewer and water on it?
That is correct.
Yeah, yes, you will.
Yes. And then my last question is for Aqua, just out of curiosity. Like other states and towns, are you doing wastewater testing for COVID-19 to help provide the state and townships with hotspot information regarding COVID?
Yeah, right now, Barbara Ann, we are working with some universities around the country to understand what the data means. And so while it's not quite as specific as the question that you had asked, we are part of a work group that's looking at that and trying to analyze what does it mean when we start to see spikes? What is it really telling us? So we're very proud of that participation, and we hope that that will yield some more information to our healthcare professionals and community health professionals.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
And I guess I'd like to answer the first question that Donna poses to the supervisors, is that when we started this process with regard to the rate increases, it was something that we felt very strong that we wanted to have a rate freeze for a 3-year period. So that will help as we go forward and our residents as they go forward. And I might add that looking at some of the projects that needed to be done during that period of time, it's most likely we would have had to have an increase during that period of time ourselves, based on some of the engineering studies we saw.
And if I may,
Donna,
to Barbara Ann's questions that I think needs to be addressed is possible uses of the proceeds is still well under consideration. There are some uses that were described in the slides, but that's not an all-inclusive list. And as was mentioned, we'll be spending at least the next year or so identifying what we could potentially use with the proceeds.
Donna, has anyone else raised their hand?
No, no one else has raised their hand, Joe.
All right,
Good.
so at this point, we'll close the hearing and we'll reconvene into the public meeting agenda. At this point, the ordinance is properly advertised, properly considered in a hearing, and now it's available for your action.
Thank you, Joe. Without any further questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the award bid on the sale of the sewer system with Aqua.
Sure.
Do I have
I'll
a
make a
second?
motion to award the sale of sewer system bid to Aqua America.
Actually, it's a motion to pass the ordinance and award the bid to Aqua.
Okay.
Aqua.
So amended. Motion to enact the ordinance and award the bid.
I have a second.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mm.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
when's the first meeting?
We'll regroup this evening.
Okay, just kidding.
All right, well, thank you, everybody.
That's a fair
Thank you.
question.
Next
Thank
week.
you.
Next week, weekly.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you so much for your faith and trust in us, and we will not let you down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In East
Thank
White.
you, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Joe, I guess we need to backpedal back into the public hearings regarding discussion of the medical clinic.
Yes, at this point, I'll open the hearing and introduce the following exhibits. Board Exhibit 1 is the ordinance. Board Exhibit 2 is an email to the Daily Local News dated October 28, 2020. Board Exhibit 3 is a proof of publication dated Wednesday, October 28, and Wednesday, November 4th. Board Exhibit 4 is the attested ordinance to the Chester County Law Library dated October 26, 2020. Board Exhibit 5 is the legal notice. Board Exhibit 6 is a notice to East Whiteland Township Planning Commission meeting of September 11, 2020. Board Exhibit 7 is the notice to the Montgomery County Planning Commission dated September 17, 2020. With that, this ordinance is a very simple ordinance. The definition of medical clinic did not allow stays in the clinic over 24 hours. This ordinance permits stays of up to 72 hours. It was sparked by an applicant that approached the township and said they want to put in a medical facility, but they generally have people stay for 72 hours due to the procedures conducted in that medical facility. And because of that, we've started the process of changing the ordinance. 72 hours seems just as reasonable as 24 hours. It's as simple as that. Does the board have any questions?
The only question, this is different from an urgent care facility, right? Urgent care, you go in and get treated and you leave.
That's right.
Correct.
There's no overnight in urgent care.
Right, okay.
It's like
surgical
short-term
stuff.
surgery, kind of short-term surgery, not a full hospital, but more than a clinic.
Yeah, and a lot of the Rothman Institute in particular has a lot of surgery centers, and they do hip replacements and all sorts of things, and generally in and out of hospital in 72 hours.
Right.
Yeah, this particular definition would be, it's a bit of a catch-all, but it includes things like outpatient surgery centers. There's a whole continuum of medical uses these days, but this is more for the outpatient surgery, and the 72-hour stay is only if it's for physical rehabilitation, therapy, and recovery directly associated with some sort of surgery.
Well, I think we have to keep our ordinances up to the way medicine's being practiced these days, so this seems very reasonable.
Agreed.
If there's no questions from the board, we can open it up to the public at this time for any comments. Donna, you see anyone raising their hand?
No one's raising their hand, Joe.
All right, so at this point, we'll close the hearing, reconvene into the public meeting agenda, and this ordinance is now in a position for your consideration.
So Sue, I will entertain a revised definition of
Okay, yeah.
medical clinic.
Do we have an ordinance number, or should I just call it the definition of medical clinic? We don't have a number for this one?
I don't have a number right now, but we will.
Not yet.
We'll get a number later. All right. I make a motion to approve the change to the zoning ordinance revising the definition of medical clinic.
Do I have a second, Rich?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, Joe, for handling all of that. Next on the agenda is item 4C, for everyone that's following along. And John Nagel, you could maybe give us a brief recap here on the divot renewal, 2-year option.
Don't we have budget ahead of that, or do I have an outdated agenda?
No,
I
you're
think you're
correct.
right. Yeah.
You're-
We should do budget and then
Let's do budget.
right after that.
Yep.
I'll be quick. I'm just waiting for Zach to load up the deck. All right. Thank you, Zach. The 2021 budget preparation has been very challenging with the pandemic and the way the economy has been going. So we took a different approach this year, more of a twofold approach. Our revenues have been pretty heavy and healthy this year because we are a white collar employment community. So most of our tax revenue has come in on plan, or actually should expect it to exceed plan by the end of this year. It's really next year's revenues we're concerned about. Continue to monitor those very closely. So overall, we'll be asking the board to approve this budget in a preliminary format tonight, and then again in the final form. But we will be revisiting the budget in the second quarter of next year, because we'll have a better idea of what the final returns for the 2020 earned income tax returns by that time next year. So Zach, could you, this basically explains that we've had an open process. We did have 2 budget workshops publicly this year, one on the 20th, one on the 26th. And the rest of this I've already mentioned. So if you could go on to the next slide, Zach. This gives you a snapshot of what we're projecting based on the hypothetical of losing some of our earned income tax, basically about 10%. This is a hypothetical projection because we really don't know what's going to happen with the earned income tax for the entire year of 2020. But right now we're actually trending above our budget, so that's a great surprise. We're also projecting the loss of significant transfer taxes and building permits because we're looking at a bit of a valley in as far as construction goes on for next year. GMH has pretty much given us the money from a building permit standpoint and a transfer tax standpoint. So we'll likely see some significant revenue losses next year for that. So overall, we're looking at about a $2 million reduction in our revenue base, or about 14%. So Zach, next slide, please. We were able to shave some significant money from the expenditures for next year. We've deferred some of the hiring that was planned both for 2019 and 2020 because of some of the things that were going on with the budget and with the economy. And I'll go further into that, but that gives you a big picture projection of the gap between revenues and expenses. Next slide, please. I think I mentioned most of this already. We're going to have this on the website, so if people want to see some of the details of what we talked about tonight, it's all included in this. Part of it's in one slide here. So next slide, please, Zach. On the expense side, our biggest cost for our operating budget is compensation for our employees. All of our labor contracts have been settled. 2021 we'll begin negotiating our next round of contracts, starting with the firefighter EMTs. And so those expenses are set based for the 21 budget. Those expenses are set based on labor contracts. Medical insurance, we've made great strides in the last 3 years. We work within a health trust because of negotiated concessions with labor contracts as well as arbitration awards. We've been able to provide a better cost-effective solution for our medical insurance for our employees. We'll be saving approximately $400,000 next year with modifications to the healthcare plan that we have transitioned to. In addition, we're seeing a sunset to a self-insured plan that we came from, and so there will be an extra annual savings beyond the $400,000, and that is about $120,000 for the self-insured plan that's expiring. Some other costs that are in these slides that I won't go into: pension, OPEB, and I believe there's a couple more on the slide. Zach, if you could. Overtime, IT, vehicle equipment, debt service, those are the major categories which are summarized on this slide. Zach, next slide, please. So just in summary, as of September this year, we projected about $2 million deficit. Over the last 2 months, staff has been working very hard to identify additional savings and reducing our net deficit to about half that of $1 million. We'll continue through the rest of this year and throughout next year, identifying further cost reductions to help reduce our net deficit. Next slide. This is our slide on fund balance, or our reserves, our rainy day fund. We've accumulated and assigned almost $60 million in reserves for a rainy day, and we certainly have, with a pandemic, we certainly have a rainy day and then some. So we hope not to use either a significant portion of this or or none of this in 2021, but we have those just in case things start to go significantly south of what we're projecting for next year. Zach, next slide, please. This gives you just a snapshot of our workforce for 2020. As I said, we've deferred some hirings. We've put in the budget some hirings for next year, specifically up to 3 police officers. But we have not yet started that process of recruiting for those officers. But that gives you an idea of what our workforce looks like, which has been actually pretty stable over the last several years. Next slide, please. And I guess that wraps it up. And I'll turn it back to the board for any questions or comments.
The only comment I have is, if we look at 2020 so far, we could have a surplus of $500,000, which would further reduce the 2021 deficit by that much. And the hope is that the earned income taxes do not go down 10% because of the pandemic, but the thinking is to, at least based on what's going on in the world now, is to be on the conservative side. Correct.
I should mention, and thanks for bringing that up, Rich. I sit on the Chester County Tax Collection Committee, and Chester County around Pennsylvania is probably the leader in collecting the earned income tax in 2020 because we are predominantly white collar here. We really haven't seen any impact from the pandemic from an economic standpoint. So we're very pleasantly surprised by that. And we're hoping that continues into 2021.
Right. Yeah, John, I appreciate we asked you back in late August when you start on this to give us a very conservative budget because we didn't know what was going to happen. We can always spend more if it comes in, but I appreciate you putting this together.
Thank you.
I think is something we can live with.
Yeah, it's a work in progress with all the department heads have done their laboring part of putting this together. And so we're very proud of the work of our staff.
John, for our residents, as this is a preliminary budget, is there anything that you see on the horizon from an expenditure or revenue side that could drastically change between now and a final budget in a 30 or 45-day period?
I see us possibly finding more ways to save in certain areas. But we're pretty close to the bone at this point. We've deferred a lot of hiring over a couple of years now for a variety of reasons. And we'll continue to look. We're never done looking for ways to find value in saving. We don't cut things just to cut. We find things like with the healthcare, those are value added. I don't think we're going to, I think we're actually going to be better off in the plan with, it creates less of it. It reduces the exposure we had for healthcare, which I really won't get into today. But we'll continue to look for ways to save more without hurting service, keeping the same level of excellent service here.
Yeah, you've done a good job on the healthcare costs, John. I appreciate that. And it's really hard to cut when most of your costs are people, which is the true of most organizations. Your costs are people. And when we have to hire somebody, we have to hire. I mean, we can't leave positions open if they're key positions. But I think we've got a good plan here, and hopefully it won't be as tight as we see as we've got here. Okay?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Without any more questions, I'll ask Rich to entertain a motion on item 4B.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 preliminary budget as presented.
Sue, do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And then go back to you, John, for just quickly regarding the Divot healthcare renewal.
This is,
as you've said, this has been a great partner from our healthcare costs and coverage, with stable and pricing. And I think we've got about a 10% reduction this year.
Right. This Divot is normally very conservative with their rate increases. This year, they were initially telling us expect about a 2% premium increase. I knew that that was usually the first shot out of the gate, and I knew that the later in the year it got, it would probably get closer to break even without a rate increase. So we actually didn't budget a rate increase for 2021. They came in with this proposal that's before you tonight, that if we commit to them for 2 years, which I think that's a no-brainer from staff standpoint, then they will really give us a 10% reduction in our costs with additional rate service credits, rate stabilization credits, as well as having multiple lines of insurance, property liability, workers' comp, and of course, health insurance. So this is mostly to get a formal vote from the board to get back to the trust entity and let them know that we are interested in exercising those credits.
We had no intention of changing anyway. We just went with them for the first time a couple years ago. So I don't see any problem with doing a two-year commitment.
I sense that what the issue is that in a volatile economy like this, there may be a new insurer on the block that offers teaser rates for the first year, and then once they have you locked in, then your premiums start to soar years later. So this trust organization has been in business for 30 years and really knows how to do health insurance and other lines of insurance very well. So that's why I feel very strongly about this.
Sure. Very good. Okay, Sue, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
I assume, Donna, there's nobody out there in the public that wants to talk about this?
Not on that, but after you make this motion, there is a comment about something else.
Okay, all right. I make a motion to approve the debit renewal for 2 years.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go any further, I wanted to just read a comment that came in after Aqua had already left, and it's from Lawrence and Kathleen Stauffer. And they say, I support Ray Brom in his comments. I appreciate the collaboration with Aqua. And I agree with his comment that it seems that we, East Whiteland Township, serve the new construction more than the concerns from the residents that have lived here for years.
Okay, thanks, Donna.
I would just add, since that topic's been brought up, it's been brought attention. We're about 2 months into the permitting process for those projects. So we've already hit the ground running, and I don't expect any hiccups to getting the.
Good. If it's a 6-month process and we're 2 months in, that's good. That's a good head start.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay. John, if you could lead us here on the preliminary grading and information on the campus.
Actually, before that, I think we need to present the master concept plan for the township. Before I introduce the folks that are going to walk us through this, what I'd like to say is that at a staff level, we've been working on the idea of improving campus here. And even before that, I'll back up a little bit. About 5 years ago or more, the township supervisors that were in office made a strategic decision to acquire the property between the township parking lot and the Chester Valley Trail. There's a property on that. There's a home on that, and we continue to rent that out to tenants. But the intent was back then, and continues to be, that we consider developing this property and doing something of a use with that piece, as well as renovate other portions of the municipal complex. So tonight we are presenting to the public the concept that's this has evolved to. We have Paul Segros from Bernardin, and we also have Dave Cavanaugh and Rick Collier from Land Concepts. Bernardin does more the architectural bricks and mortar stuff, and Land Concept, as some of us already know here, does the site and land improvements. So I'll hand it over to either Bob Floyd, who's been the staff person that's been coordinating this, and ask him if he has anything else he wants to mention before we turn it over to the professionals.
Thanks, John. I would just like to say that this has been an ongoing process, and we've developed a very strategic team with Land Concepts and Bernardin to be able to present what we are considering a very exciting time in our lives as far as moving forward with the proposed police department building, along with some other outstanding features of the property. It gives us the opportunity to give the police department a safe environment, a protected environment, not only for our officers, but also for our community. And we're very excited about them presenting this plan. At that point, I will turn it over to Paul and John, or Dave and Rick.
This is John Meadows. Good evening, everyone. I'll get us started off. Everyone else was introduced and will be cooperating to some extent on talking about the features of this plan. We're going to endeavor to be brief. This is I think, as I said, it's a conceptual plan. It's not necessarily representing exactly the way things will ultimately be, but as Bob said, we've been working through this, and through meetings with the township and study of the site, we've developed this concept, which addresses a lot of needs for the township. I guess what you're seeing here is the concept itself. Rick, what I would suggest is maybe you or Dave could just take a couple minutes to just talk about some existing features of the site that we've been conscious of and sensitive to.
Sure, I'll be glad to do that. I'm not sure, Dave had a conflict that arose suddenly, a family issue, so I'm not sure he's been able to join us yet, but we both know what's going on well, so I'll be happy to do that. The thing that we bring as part of the team is looking at the overall complex and working to organize it in a way that when you come in from Conestoga Road, it feels like a campus from the time you enter throughout, so that it's very clear when you're coming onto the property where you need to go in order to get various types of services, and not confuse public use facilities and access and parking with what are non-public uses. For example, the service road to the Public Works Department really isn't a public way, although someone driving up the main road may get confused and go there. So we use that same approach with the police, because while there needs to be some public access, it's primarily secured access. So the first thing we do, and what we do with every project, is to look carefully at the site features, and that includes topography, woodlands. If there are wetlands or flooding areas or floodplains, we look at those. So we did this for the portion of the campus that had been targeted for the police building, which, as you look at the drawing, is the right-hand side. And that sort of L-shaped tan building is the proposed concept for the police building. So we looked at those features so that we could work the facilities, the parking, the building, and the requirements of the police building into the site to minimize grading, because that saves you cost, and to make sure that it is visible from Conestoga Road, that it's a component of the overall campus, and that all of these pieces are knit together in a comprehensive way, so that there's no confusion and there's a sense of unity throughout the campus. So that's the approach that our team has taken. I won't go into the details, but what you see here are a lot of red lines, and those are steep slopes that we are trying to avoid all of because they're hard to negotiate. They don't provide handicap accessible routes, and they cost a lot of money to cut them up and make them flat. So that's the red areas, and we have slopes on both sides of the proposed police building. We also have done test pits, and the underlying bedrock is limestone, and that creates some challenges for stormwater management. And we become more familiar with what those are, and we'll be doing more testing there. So all of this information was used to inform the concept that you see here. And we'll go through, and I think I'll pass it back to John and to Paul to go through the concept for the police building. But clearly you can see as you come up the main road, you know you're on campus by a gateway treatment. You then turn left to go to the fire company. You would then proceed up the road, and we marked the public way in green arrows so that you would have an access to the police building for the public on the left, and then proceed up to where the administration building is now, with public access to a proposed open area, which we call the gathering area, accessible from the trail, the Chester Valley Trail. The blue lines are ones that specifically identify that those are limited. And in this case, it's limited for police access only, both from the campus drive and from Mill Road. And then the yellow line is the access to the public works. So that, overall is the approach that we took to organizing the campus, organizing the features and facilities in a way that represents a cohesive campus. We also have acknowledged the environmental awareness and education area, which is a non-buildable area, but very important to stormwater management. There are wetlands in there, and there's a lot of interesting habitat. So we didn't want to ignore that as leftover space. That's part of the campus, part of the image, part of the habitat, as well as the built facilities. So now I'll go back to the Bernardin folks to walk us through the building. Well, not through the building, but walk us through the building concept.
Sure. And just to build a little more on what Rick was saying, we've been calling this a municipal campus. That's kind of the tagline we've been using. And, for many years it was you had your administration building here, and just really, and John Nagel had referred to this earlier. I mean, within the last 5 years, there's been additions to this site, namely the fire company and the public works complex. And John mentioned the property along Mill Lane. There's obviously also the Chester Valley Trail. So this is really, I think, just just maybe not even necessarily intentionally, have started to become really a nexus of activity, of recreational activity, of municipal activity. And, what we're doing now is looking to continue to enhance that. And as Rick was talking about, there's a high priority is bringing a greater sense of arrival and sense of place, just in terms of even how you enter the site. And then also how you circulate through it, as he described. And the buildings that you've seen, the fire company and the public works, they very intentionally were meant to communicate in similar architectural languages and start to enhance that sense of place. And in the future, the intent would be to continue that with the police station. And then just overall too, just creating a, what we're kind of generally calling right now a gathering area adjacent to the Chester Valley Trail. Again, that's an intent to enhance the sense of place, sense of community, sense of focus, and just really continue to build up that concept. The two of the key features driving that organization, are the creation of this gathering area and, as was mentioned, the police station. The police department is currently housed in part of the municipal building, and perhaps at one time it was sufficient and served its purpose well. But given how the township has grown and evolving needs of the police services, it's become apparent that it's important to create a facility that is suitable for the purpose. If we just talk about the police station a little bit, Zach, maybe you can zoom in on that a little bit. So we've had extensive communications with the police department about some of the things that were especially important to them. We've studied these matters as well and understand what works for a modern police station. We've looked at other examples, local examples, to see what comparable municipalities are doing. Picking up on what Rick had talked about, one thing that's important for a well-functioning police department, and especially kind of for the security of the people that work there, is being able to have security for the building. And one way of achieving that is by having these parallel paths of travel through the site, which Rick had mentioned. The green lines and arrows that you see on the roadways represent public routes through the site. And as Rick had said, you enter the site and then the public can continue back to the administration building, or you have that left-hand turn as you're going up the hill, at which you go into a small parking lot for public visitors to the police station. The way that parking lot is set up, and the intent of the way that parking lot will be set up, and the way the police station will be designed and integrated into the site, is such that the finished floor elevation is going to be probably up to 4 or 5 feet above the parking lot. And there would be steps and then a ramp for accessibility, getting you from the parking lot level up to the entrance. And that's part of a strategy of creating I guess you'd say a little bit more defensibility and security for the police station, but doing it in a way where architectural features such as a stair and a ramp and landscaping, and retaining walls, kind of skillfully designed, can become part of the building, part of communicating the building architecture, and not look like you're creating a defense, so to speak. It's kind of doing that in a subtle way, and in a way that that ultimately enhances the building. The police station itself is built, is positioned to be parallel with the prevailing grade lines. And the way the grade changes on the site is such that this police station can be on 2 levels, and that's another advantage for the department, in that you can have your office and administrative functions on the main floor, on the upper floor, and then this lower level, what is being proposed here is to use that as a secure parking area. Again, that's another beneficial feature for the building, for the personnel who work there. That lower level is accessed, by that blue that blue line path that you see that goes through the site. That would be the intent there. You see at each end, there's kind of a red star. The intent would be to have a traffic control feature of some kind, so that, only authorized personnel and vehicles can access that route. Another part of this route is we're proposing a second access point on Mill Lane. Now that's beneficial too, because the personnel at the police department can enter and leave via that controlled entrance. And again, it just adds a layer of security. It also means too that if a vehicle is leaving for responding to a call, they can use that access route rather than going out through the public access route to Route 401 Conestoga Road. You'll see on that blue route too, there's a spur coming off that goes into the building, and then you see it come exit the other at the end of the building. That's a sally port, which is basically a place where you can transfer someone who's being transported to the police station. This would occur at someone who's circulation you want to control. So that would be at the lower level of the building. The vehicles would enter into that lower parking level, and then into a secure vestibule where the transfer of the person can occur, and then they would go by a secure stair or elevator to the upper level. And that east end of the building, the right side of the page, as you see, it has kind of a diagonal hatch in it. That's to represent the generalized area of the secure part of the police station, where you would have detention areas, evidence storage, interview rooms, processing, that kind of thing. Now again, we did study a police station plan some time ago. It was a different, slightly different building configuration. We've continued to work with that general, I guess you would say, width and length of building. As you can see in this plan, it's has an angle in it, which can certainly help to incorporate some architectural interest. But at this point, there's not it's not necessarily a fixed floor plan. Again, it's conceptual. As we continue to develop the project and study the site, it may start to evolve slightly, but we feel very strongly that we've arrived at a concept that is really a good springboard to start to develop this into something that's going to be great for the police station and great for the township.
John, I'm aware that we're a little limited in time. I think we've probably used it, but certainly form follows function, and we have listened to what the requirements of police are for security, safety, parking, and separation from the public. And I think we've addressed those well. It does fit much better with the site. We have divided stormwater management into 3 areas, which is easier to manage. And I know that Daryl Becker is also on this call. He's the engineer that's going to be working with us and has been working as part of our team. And we've already discussed how we're going to begin to move forward with the stormwater. You heard earlier about how DEP permits take a long time. We're very aware of that. And so we want to get that in the works right away so that we can follow the timelines that DEP typically are following these days for permitting. But I think we've hit the highlights, and maybe we ought to ask for questions unless Paul or Dave have something else to add that we forgot.
The only thing that I would add, Rick and John, is just so the residents understand, is that this concept here is of the third version that you folks have put together. So it's been looked at and revised a number of times, and this is the third version.
Yes,
Yeah,
creativity is a patient search.
this is Paul Scroy from Bernard, and I would just like to add and sort of reinforce a comment that John made about the language of the architecture on this campus, that there's a really beautiful opportunity for this new police station to borrow the architectural language. And it should be pointed out that the main public entrance to the police station is going to be very recognizable from Conestoga Road entrance. And it's really important that we make note of that, both from a wayfinding standpoint, as well as creating this cohesive language on the campus.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Supervisor?
We're not asking for any
decision
on this tonight. It was actually, we presented this to the board at one of the budget workshops in October. This is the first time to the public at large. Just more of a milestone for us. We've been taking public action on this project for almost a year with different authorizations to engage or re-engage the architects, both firms, in continuing on with this process. But as we last discussed, there are some things similar to the discussions we had about the sewer projects that are on us, that there's likely to be some things we want to get started on through Daryl's office, and that's the next item on the agenda. So I don't want to jump the gun, but I'm just framing what this agenda item is about, and it's about just presenting this concept to the public at this time.
Correct. Sue and Rich, any other questions at this or comments at this point in time?
No, I have none.
Okay, I guess, Daryl, if you could just give us a little bit of a brief comment pertaining to the testing that you're going to be looking for authorization tonight on.
Sure. In order to meet the schedule that I'm aware of, which is bidding next winter and then construction in 2022, we should get started on some of the initial testing, the infiltration testing for the detention basins. As you may have noticed on the concept plan, there were 3 locations circled in a green color and labeled as SWM area. Those are 3 stormwater management areas that are proposed on the site. So the first critical stage is to get that infiltration testing done, which means we have to do some preliminary grading to determine the size and depth of those basins. And then we do infiltration testing at that elevation. That testing has to occur obviously before the ground freezes, and has to occur prior or with the temperatures above 32 degrees. So it's kind of critical that we kind of get that process moving now, so we don't get too far into December, and then we can't do testing, which would then probably delay that until March sometime. Again, as was mentioned, the permitting here could take up to 9 months. So we want to, again, get that started so we can, excuse me, perform the design and get the permit into DEP.
Okay, thank you, Daryl.
So you think we're going to get some cold weather?
Well, I hope not, but you never know.
Okay.
This is just the first step, right?
That's correct.
That's all it is, right?
The first critical stage so we can continue the process, the design process moving through the winter.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
So if the board is accepting of the concept plan that's presented generally, and we don't anticipate the building moving significantly or any other of those features moving, we'll start our preliminary grading and then test at those locations identified on the plan.
Right.
Do we have a dollar amount on this, or are we just going with a general go ahead?
I provided an overall number for the land development planning. This would be part of that number. I don't know if John Nagel shared that with you or not.
I think there was either a email or a proposal that I did share with the board. Can you just briefly go through that, Daryl? What you're referencing?
Sure. Maybe by memory, I don't have it with me right now, but obviously the initial part of this would be to do the preliminary grading and then the stormwater infiltration testing. At that point, then we proceed with final design of the stormwater management, which means, again, determining profiles of the access drive, grading of the entire site, designing the parking lots and the parking areas, and then developing a land development plan, E&S controls, developing the NPDS permit application, plans, calculations, submitting all that then to DEP for approval of an NPDS permit. So we'd like to get all that done and get that permit in sometime around March, early April. Again, a 9-month process to get that approved takes us to the end of the year. So it's critical we try and get all this stuff moving now. And I think the number I threw at you, John, was about $150,000 or $60,000 to do all that.
What are we approving tonight? Not the whole 150, or are we?
No, I thought
No,
it
we're
was
just-
just the first step.
So is there a price
Preparing-
for that, or do we care?
Preparing the preliminary grading plan and the infiltration testing.
Right. And I haven't given John a number on that.
Okay.
I don't believe I did. Is that correct, John?
No, I don't think you did either. That's why I was hedging.
Yeah.
I mean, even if all the permitting and development approvals are in place by the end of next year, then we're not going to start construction in the winter, would
Right.
we? Why would we do that?
No, we would bid over the winter. We would bid the winter of
Okay.
2021 and construct in 2022.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
There's a lot more homework to do before we even talk about.
Oh, enormous, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's not a dollar amount in the October 30th memo email, so
Well, we know we want to do it. And if the whole thing is 150, then this is less than that.
right.
All right.
Definitely less than
And,
that.
and we would ask Daryl to get back to us, because I believe we have to find, you don't do the actual testing, the infiltration testing, if I'm correct, right, Daryl?
Yes, we will perform the testing. John Neal will provide the backhoe to dig the hole, and we will do the testing.
Okay, all right, good. So if you can give us some hard costs, that would be, or soft costs, that would be helpful. We can get that back to the board, but maybe the board could approve this recommendation contingent on us getting you the cost in a timely manner.
Yeah, that would be fine. I certainly
that's
don't want to
fine.
hold it up. Don't want to hold it up.
Sure, that's
Right.
fine.
And I understand that there are no public comments at this point in time pertaining to this item. So Rich,
Yeah.
I'll ask you to,
Yeah, I'll make a motion to authorize the preliminary grading plan and infiltration testing component.
okay. We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, John. I'll get that number to you, if not this week, early next week.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we have a question. Barbara Ann Thav has a question. I'm gonna let her in.
Sure.
Hi, thanks. I'm just curious, the creative team that's working on this, are you also working on any ideas or concepts for the house in Valley Creek Park?
I don't think we gave them that's not their job. No.
No? Are we looking at what we're going to do with that building?
Not right now, we're not. No.
Okay. The other thing too, I'd like to ask is, could this creative team possibly be involved with helping the township develop overall township branding for things like signage and things like that, that could be used not only here at the campus, but potentially at parks and things too?
We've done that a couple times before. I think we're going to have this group focus on this particular project for the time being.
Okay, well, if they have that capability, Sue, that might be something to ask and inquire about, because I know we've had struggles with coming to fruition on some of that creative look and feel. And we're getting to the point of needing to update some signs and build some new things for new parks and whatnot. And that would be helpful.
I've
Um,
had sign design since I
I know.
started 5 years ago, so I understand where you're coming from.
Yep. And then the other thing I just would like to make as a statement, I don't live over there, as you know, but I do know that residents that do live over there, and since the building of the Public Works building, they've commented about lights and things like that. So I just would like everybody to consider light pollution with creating an enhanced campus like this, especially with what we do need as a separate police station that I'm guessing will require lots of lighting 24/7. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to respond to that. That was one of the first things I dealt with, and I think John Meadows and on it together. We actually had to go to the zoning hearing board to get an exception because of the height. I guess it was a height variance for the emergency lighting. We have obviously times in the winter where we have severe snowstorms and our public works crew is operating 24-hour shifts. And so I think the standards go up to 30 feet high, but they're not kept on except for during emergencies. So I've been here almost 6 years. I haven't heard the volume of complaints about light pollution with respect to the garage. I'll be interested to hear who those folks are, and we can certainly address any issues that we can with them. But I think they've been effective. You know, the emergency use of those lights has been very effective for us.
Wouldn't the police station have to be lit up all the time, though?
I don't want to speculate on what the lighting would be for the police station until we get into the design of that. So.
Yeah, so that's just something to think about because our light pollution is increasing quite a bit because of all of our development in East Whiteland. Thank you.
And I think, as you all know, there has to be a landscape and a lighting plan as part of the land development set, which we'll all work on and make sure that it meets people's criteria.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right. Then we move on to, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. We appreciate working with you on this project. It's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you again, everybody. Have a great evening.
You too. We move on to item 4F with Steve Brown to give a quick note about the grant application resolution for the County Green Region grant application.
Thank you, Scott. Township staff is proposing and is actually working on already a grant application to the PICO Green Region Open Space Program in the amount of $10,000 to pay for 50% of the cost of preparation of a master plan for improvements at Down East Park. The reason this project was selected is because, as the board is well aware, and some folks attending the meeting and listening in this evening, the Bido family who lives in the Down East neighborhood has been planning to have a playground built, replacing our old aged equipment in Down East Park with new equipment. And the playground would be a memorial to their young daughter who passed away tragically due to a form of cancer not long ago. And so the idea is that we would prepare a master plan for complementary improvements in the park and then would at some point execute those improvements. But at this point, we're just asking the board to pass a resolution so we can submit the grant application.
Any questions?
It's fine.
Yep. Sue, can I accept the motion?
Make a motion to approve the Green Region grant application resolution.
Rich, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda, letter G, John Neild. If you can give us a brief overview of the emergency work with the sinkhole repair?
Yes, this is the location where the old flat road pump station was that 2 years ago we had an issue with a sinkhole. We rebuilt the station now that we call the Great Valley Parkway Station in a different location. We thought we had this area stabilized, but over the summer with the tropical storm and some of the other recent rain, it started to open up again. And it's getting bigger and bigger. We've been filling it in with stone and it keeps sinking. We had our engineer out who was with Arrow, geotechnical engineer. They recommended a grout solution to take care of this problem. So we're asking for permission to move ahead with this repair. The estimate is going to be around $20,000. Sinkholes are an open-ended thing. It varies, but we're going to keep it in that range. We're not going to get too far above that.
Okay. You don't have much choice on this, I don't think. Rich, will you entertain a motion?
Sure. Make a motion to authorize the emergency work because of the sinkhole at the Great Valley Parkway Pump Station. Estimated 20,000.
Sue, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All in favor?
Aye, sorry.
Aye.
Yep.
Aye. Okay. Next, John, can you lead us on 4H regarding the annual compensation for board members?
It's contagious. Sorry, I muted myself. Having been in this business a long time, I'm very familiar with Second Township Code and the compensation levels, as modest as they are for elected supervisors. Basically, the Second Class Township Code provides the elected officials be compensated based on population in townships of the second class. Because our population in the 2010 census exceeded 10,000 residents, it raised the compensation eligibility for board members, annual compensation to $3,250 a year from $2,500, which is the amount that the current board is individually paid per year. And I'm not an attorney, so Joe can jump in at any point with this, but as I understand it, if the board passes this resolution or motion this evening, the raise would not be effective until the next term of the next supervisor that gets elected in East Whiteland Township. So this should have been done, in my opinion, back in 2011 when the 2010 census results came out, but it wasn't, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. So that's what the recommendation is for the board to consider passing this action this evening.
Well, with this massive increase, I would just want to understand, the next person to get elected gets the raise, but the two people who are continuing their terms do not until they get reelected. So it's only a newly elected supervisor that would get the raise.
That's right.
Or a reelected supervisor.
Or reelected, but you have to have an election. It doesn't go to the people who are still in office.
Right, you can't
That's
vote for
right.
your own raise is the, I think
Exactly.
the spirit of the.
Yep. All right, well,
I know, but
okay.
It's okay.
Sue, I will entertain a motion for you
Oh, I'd
to.
love to make a motion. I authorize, make a motion to authorize annual compensation for future supervisors to the state limit of $32.50 a year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right,
Aye.
big money,
Big raise.
big money. Okay.
All right, and our last item in this category is Steve Brown's opportunity to tell us about the proposal from McMahon on a feasibility study at Moores Road for sidewalk connection.
I think Zach is more familiar with this. If not, I can do my best with it. I
Is
mean,
this the little extension from 401 to Bryn Aaron?
yes, yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
what it is. It's a tricky little area.
Yeah, a lot of kids need to cross there and it's difficult. So I don't know what
Right.
they're going to do, but they said they'd look at it. So.
Right. No, that's exactly right. There's a development nearby that's going to construct a sidewalk around Bryn Aaron and connect, some existing sidewalk. And I think we've decided to kind of at the same time keep the momentum going in that area and study this little stretch out to Conestoga Road.
Let me ask you this. Why do we need to have a study at this point in time? We already know that the little ducklings will be funding that sidewalk connection on the other side of the road where they're located. Do we really need to go through with the feasibility study with the kids walking through there over to the high school?
Yeah,
Good question.
that's the hard part.
Can't we
They don't
just
know
go to
how to do it.
yeah?
Why
Can't we
can't we
just go to engineering?
Just go to engineering.
What?
So I think the idea is that so this isn't the portion of the sidewalk that Malvern Ducklings will be constructing. That's on we'll call it the north or west side of Church Road, sort of around the corner there at Bryn Aaron, around the basin. This is to actually get what would be from that future sidewalk corner down the rest of the way along Church, where it turns into Moores, and then across. So the issue is not so much, feasibility, probably a loose word. It's basically, it's a little more complicated than it looks when you're just walking out there. It's very narrow. So I think the idea is to come up with a couple of ideas as to how we could actually make that connection. And then we would do the actual design and construction, which I don't imagine, again, within reason, would probably not be a hugely expensive, but maybe a little more complicated than it looks at first blush.
And this is on our dime.
This would just kind of pick up, as Steve said, would sort of piggyback on the sidewalk improvement that the developer is doing. A lot of the signal work and crosswalks across Conestoga Road are already in place. So we do have that going for us. But again, it's very narrow. It drops off very quickly. There's a stream and a stormwater facility in the area. So it's a very focused area, but there's more moving pieces to it than it seems. Yeah.
It's very tricky.
Is it within our right of way already, or is it part of the common area of the development up the street? I forget the name. The big houses, the big houses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd have to look at that a little more closely, but there is some right of way. I believe there's a PennDOT basin in this general area. Okay. Somewhere, you're right, there is some private ownership that we would have to be aware of. So how those things all converge and what the best way to lay this out will be part of this study.
Yeah. Will doing this study save some engineering costs when it's engineered? I would think so.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a good way to jumpstart that. Basically, everything that they do will help inform the design, and they'll do some sketches and things like that they can then refine as they move into actual engineering. It may be that it's a very simple project, but we just need more information on what some of the constraints are there in order to determine how to do this. Okay. Donna, could you tell me if there's anyone out there in the public that has comment on this?
No comments.
Okay. Then Rich, I'll entertain a motion for the proposal here.
Okay, make a motion to accept the McMahon proposal for a feasibility study for the Moores Road sidewalk connection, not to exceed $6,000.
Sue, do I have a second? Sue?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda is something that we've talked about, I think, on numerous times. is the authorization for advertisement for sale on 3 different vehicles on muni bid. I don't see really a need unless someone has any other questions that we haven't talked about on these.
Scott, I have to make a comment, and I apologize. In reviewing this version of the agenda, somehow one of the authorized advertisement for sale, one of the vehicles is missing. It was basically 4 sales and 4 purchases, and noticeable by his absence is a Ford Escape for code enforcement.
Yes. Are you saying that Ford escaped the agenda?
Yeah, the Ford. We're
He's making a joke.
We get it.
Let me just mention this for the record, just for my own sanity. We're replacing a 2008 Ford Escape in code with a 2020 Ford Escape in code. It should be a 4-for-4 trade, not a 3-for-4 trade.
Okay, we'll add a Ford Escape as 5D.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
All right. Sue, can I entertain a motion?
Can we do all 4 at once?
Yeah, why don't we?
Okay,
Absolutely.
I make a motion to authorize the advertisement for sale of the following 4 vehicles on Municipid: the Dodge Charger, the Ford F-550, the Ford Expedition, and a Ford Escape.
Do I have a second, Rich?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And an authorization to purchase the following vehicles. John, does that look accurate?
Yeah. No, that is correct. It was the sales that I was concerned about.
Okay. Again, I think we've had a number of discussions pertaining to this and then the necessity for these and a number of issues pertaining to it we've talked about. Unless anyone else has any other questions specific to this, I'll entertain a motion from Rich to, why don't we hit all 4 of them again, Rich?
Sure. Yeah, motion to authorize purchasing 4 vehicles listed in items 6A through D. 1 Dodge and 3 Fords.
Do I have a second, Sue?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we're into zoning with Ted Locker. I think item A1 seems pretty simplistic, where I don't think we really need to send a solicitor pertaining to that unless you think otherwise, Ted. Seems everything is okay from that standpoint. Neighbors are talking to each other.
Yes, that is correct. The neighbors are working with each other, and it is a pretty simple application to the zoning hearing board.
Great.
Okay. However, on the next item, I guess it's a little bit more complicated. So if you could maybe go through that a little bit.
Sure. This is an application of 29 Restaurant, which is in the corporate center. They extended a deck, a second floor deck actually, and rebuilt a first floor deck. And in extending the second floor deck, triggered a requirement for sprinklers to be extended as well. They're claiming they're a historic building, and the code unfortunately doesn't see it that way. So they want to go to an appeals board, and Township hasn't, I don't believe, used an appeals board as of yet for the Uniform Construction Code. So they are filing an appeal to, I guess, relieve them of the requirement to install sprinklers for the additional 3.5 feet, I believe it is, that they added to the second floor deck.
Who's the UCC Board of Appeals? Is that another group I don't know about?
Well,
it's actually a joint board with, and Steve will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's Malvern Borough and East Town. that was set up years back as a multi-municipal board of appeals.
Oh. Do we have any residents that are on the board, or is it all Malvern and Easttown people?
No, we would have one on the board at least.
Okay.
Originally, each municipality appointed 2 members. One was an alternate. And this board is rarely used in any of the municipalities. One of our members did not respond, but luckily the other did. Interested in serving. For what it's worth, neither of Malvern's members are active. And again, fortunately, both of Easttown's are. So we would have 3 active members, which is enough to conduct the hearing.
Are these lawyers, like they're on zoning hearing board, or are these just regular residents?
Now, there's a very specific skill set. I mean, basically, you look for architects and plumbers and people with those skills and
tradesmen.
Tradesmen, right? That's typically what you look for. If you can't find them, then I think anybody can serve. But that's really got to be the first choice.
I can only imagine you got to do a whole sprinkler system because they added 3 feet to the deck.
Right.
Wow.
Is it a new sprinkler system, or they just need to extend the existing one?
New one. Extending the existing.
Right.
So they already have
Well,
something.
extending it, that's not so bad. All right. I don't know.
But underneath our zoning, it is a requirement, correct?
That would be underneath the building code. It would be a requirement.
Right.
Yes.
Right. It happens to be here on the agenda because it's a very similar board. It operates in almost the same way that the zoning hearing board operates, although, right, it is not a zoning ordinance section that's being appealed.
Well, I still can't see sending Joe to it.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah,
I don't
we don't
see
need to
why.
send anybody to that.
No need.
All right. But Ted, just to bring everybody up, you're gonna be coming to us at some point, correct, for some experts to be brought to represent the township?
Yes, I would assume that would typically be done at reorganization meeting where we would reappoint people to that board. And they would have staggered terms, very similar to the zoning board members.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's certain qualifications by law that members have to qualify for. You can't just appoint anyone. The law actually determines it's got to be an architect, or it's got to be a developer, et cetera.
Well, we'll have to look around to see what we can find. Considering they hardly ever meet, it's not really hard duty.
Right.
Do we have a question or a comment that's coming in from Debbie Mobile?
Okay.
Go ahead, Deb.
I would think that you would want to send someone from the fire department there. I mean, I know that 2 feet or 3 feet doesn't sound like much, but those codes are in place for a reason. And I've been in that bar where they've been stuffed in people way over what is probably capacity. And if we have an obligation to safety, then we have an obligation to follow the rules. And I mean, maybe the lawyer isn't the person, but if they're going to change, if this committee is going to change the rules in East Whiteland Township, somebody with an area of expertise in that area should be there to speak on our behalf. Thank you.
Joe, any thoughts?
Well, isn't the purpose of the members on that board having a specific skill? That's how
Yeah,
they're
if you
even
want-
on that board.
Yeah, that's true. And you don't ever hire, you need an attorney to represent you as a party. A fireman can't represent you as a party. He can be called as a witness as part of the attorney's case, but he can't represent you as a party. So that doesn't make sense. Now, if the fire people are interested in it, it's a public hearing. They can come to the hearing, voice their opinion, and they're certainly invited to do so. But they can't represent the township. Only attorneys can represent parties.
Staff will attend the meeting. I'll attend it. Brian Willicum will attend it. I don't know if Ted will or not, but Brian is well versed in the requirements of the code and is there to answer questions that I'm pretty sure the board members will have. Just like Joe said, not to represent the township, but to answer questions, provide clarifications regarding the ordinance requirements.
That sounds very reasonable.
Yeah, that sounds like a solution. Okay, thanks, Steve. Moving on to planning and development. Zach, I'll let you lead on some of these items.
Yes,
If you're
sir.
ready.
Thank you. So under 8A, we're not considering any decisions this evening on any land developments or subdivisions. But under 8B, we have an application that before you tonight for discussion and a consideration to have the solicitor draft a resolution for approval. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Daly. He's the engineer for the applicant. He's on the meeting here. Give him a moment to get unmuted and all of that.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Chris.
Yep.
Hi, Chris.
Perfect. I'm sure some of you are familiar with this project. It's been going on for about a year and a half now. It started with getting zoning relief from a building setback requirement. And then we received approval to consolidate lot 10 into lot 9 and lot 11. And after that, we received conditional use approval for steep slope disturbance. This property is located at the cul-de-sac of 3 Ton Road, which is a private road. It's surrounded by Buckeye, which is just to the east, Planet Granite, I believe, to the north. And then there's another facility just to the west that I'm not sure what the use is. It is a wooded lot, but we've been working with the township to try to minimize the disturbance to only what is needed for this development. The applicant agreed to go with a large retaining wall to minimize the disturbance and protect as much woodlands as possible, along with the steep slopes that are associated with this lot. The building proposed is an office warehouse, and we propose a wraparound driveway. It is one way on the east side, but it provides good circulation for the staff that's working at the building and also for emergency vehicles. We are proposing a reduction in parking spaces with the approval by you guys, of course. We don't need the required parking of 66 parking spaces. Instead, we are proposing a reduction, I believe, of about 14 spaces, which we show in dashed lines on the plan. Zach, I don't know if you could zoom in to those spaces. They're kind of spread out throughout the site. And those are areas where we can propose additional landscaping. The applicant, who is unable to attend tonight's meeting, he has no intention of converting those to parking spaces. Those future spaces would only be needed if the tenant were to require those spaces. We have very clean review letters from the township staff. Mr. Becker, I had a conversation with him about a couple of his comments. They are very minor, and we have no issues with complying. We are proposing 6 waivers from the ordinance, one of them being the parking spaces, which I had mentioned, which is from the zoning ordinance, which is, as I mentioned, we can get approval from the Board of Supervisors to reduce the number of parking spaces. And if you'd like, I can run through the remaining waivers that are proposed.
Yeah, are they any significant waivers there?
One of them has to do with sidewalk along the frontage. As I'm sure you are aware, there's no sidewalk along 3 Ton Road, and there's a very short frontage since we are at the end of the cul-de-sac bulb.
Right.
So we're requesting a waiver from that. The other has to do with landscape. One of them is the 20% woodland disturbance, which we are exceeding. We're disturbing about 50%. And then there's also the tree for tree replacement that's required. We are short 43 trees, and the only reason we're short is because we have a limited space. We did fit in trees everywhere possible. And as discussed at the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant, my client, has agreed to plant those trees at a location specified by the township.
That's good.
Number 5 is a waiver requested, which requires 7 street trees along the northern property line. As you can see, that is a right-of-way for a future road. So since that is considered frontage, it doesn't make sense to plant trees there now, since they may end up getting removed when the road is constructed. And then number 6 pertains to stormwater infiltration. We had a geotechnical engineer do an evaluation of this property, and it is underlain with limestone, and it is susceptible to sinkholes. So they recommend that no stormwater infiltration take place on this site. Instead, we are proposing a managed release, which is acceptable by DEP. And since we're over an acre of disturbance, this is being reviewed by the Conservation District and DEP. And we are very far along in that process. We've already received comments, which I've addressed, and we should be receiving the NPDES permit shortly.
Okay, it doesn't sound like anything frightening there. The spaces, the parking spaces that you're reducing, would they be able to be added if at some point somebody else bought the building 10 years from now and needed the extra space, needed the additional parking? Would there
Yes,
still be room to do them?
Yep, we're going to make sure they're flat enough in terms of grading, and also I did account for those spaces for stormwater management.
Okay.
The road off of the cul-de-sac, where would that even go? Would that go all the way
That's
over?
the one that goes in by the tank farms and comes out by Bishop Duke. Now, I don't know if it'll ever get built, but
That's an enormous distance.
yes, it's unlikely to get built.
All that land is owned by Buckeye, right? The company that owns the tanks.
That's correct.
Did we ask for that road?
We did. There was a feasibility study completed a number of years ago that would extend that road. You're right, it's very unlikely at this point, but I think providing access to the back of that lot and, just in the name of planning, I think that was sort of the idea. It's essentially unused space for the purposes of this building. So
what's it going to be, grass, or there's going to be trees there?
it'll be maintained. I mean, I'll let Chris speak, but it'll be maintained as is now. There wouldn't be any disturbance of that area.
Oh, not at all. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
So there's trees on there now, I guess, right?
Yeah,
No,
there's
I
some
don't think-
trees there.
No?
Are there some? I don't think there is much right there. Isn't that
No, I
next to
I
Rossi's?
take that back. There's more brush in that location.
It's just brush and junk. And
Yep.
All
we
right.
certainly wouldn't want you to put trees in there. You know, if they're going to come out again at some point, that doesn't make
Right.
any sense.
Rather
Chris,
put them
I
where
have-
we want, yeah.
Yeah, Chris, a couple questions. One is above the retaining wall on the south side there. I know the properties, you're removing 193 trees. How many trees are you cutting down, like north or on the southern part of that, on that retaining wall? Are they
It's a minimal number of trees. The only reason why we are going back about 20 feet there is to put the geogrid in for the retaining wall and to also put in a swale to route the stormwater away from the site into the stormwater facility. I don't have the exact number. I could actually, give me 1 second.
Chris, if you'd like, I can pull up the exhibit that you provided today, showing the area of disturbance in the existing wooded areas. It does give some context as to what's to be removed, what's to be disturbed, and what was going to stay in place.
Because there are some sizable trees in the back of that property.
Did that, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at our tree survey that we performed that's on the existing conditions plan. And a lot of those trees are dead, so they're not viable at all. And then the trees that are viable, the largest tree I'm seeing is about, 16 inches. Now that's bordering, that's along the retaining wall on the south side there that you had mentioned.
Okay.
So Scott, to your point about numbers, there's a total of 376, and they're proposing to remove, a combination of live and dead clusters of trees, 193,
right,
which leaves 183 to be retained, and those are in these areas that remain green in this exhibit. Everything in white essentially is going to be graded and disturbed and built upon. Everything that's not in white will remain as is.
Okay,
correct.
The other question, Zach and Chris, I have is that reviewing the September 18 letter from D.L. Howell that talks about the waiver request. There's no reference in there pertaining to planting trees elsewhere in the township. Where would that be in writing?
That actually just came up at the planning commission meeting that we had. So that was after I wrote that letter. Was anything drafted, Zach, in the minutes for the planning commission meeting?
So it will be reflected in the minutes, but would also be what I would propose, and Joe, feel free to chime in, would be that this would be listed as a condition of approval, that the applicant has offered to install these trees at an offsite location.
Yeah, I would actually figure out where they're going to be installed and put it in the resolution.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I think there was discussion at the planning commission meeting about Backton Hill Park.
Correct.
We're having
this has been
everybody
done-
put stuff at Backton Hill.
That seems to be our go-to place these days.
Well, it's wide open. It could use some trees.
Absolutely.
It is, yeah.
And with development there, we have a lot of trees proposed, so we'll just be able to replace those trees with these trees.
Good to me.
Okay.
There are a couple of comments that need to be sorted through in the codes and life safety review. Obviously, they're not fully into the design of the building yet, so some of this is a work in progress, but we will have conditions of approval included if the board's so inclined, that make sure that all the fire flow and hydrants and all those types of things that still need to be kind of sorted out through the building permit process are accounted for.
Okay.
Well, the building permit stuff wouldn't be in the resolution.
Right, there
That
are
just
some
needs to be-
comments. Right, we won't get into the specifics. It's more about reflecting the comments that are existing from life safety review.
Okay. Anything else, Zach, Chris, you wanna add?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. I think, Sue, is it, your turn to make a
Doesn't
motion?
matter. We don't have to go in order, but I'll do it. I guess my question is, do I need to include the statement about including the tree placements in the resolution? Do I need to say that, Joe?
Well, hopefully James Craig is listening to this meeting and he's picking up on it.
All right, James, pay attention. Okay.
James,
I'm
you
here.
pay
I'm listening.
attention?
Okay, good enough. All right, I'll make a motion to authorize the solicitor to draft a resolution for LD 10 2020 400 3-ton road preliminary final land development.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Sure.
Yeah.
Zach, you've got now some extension of time issues here for 8C.
These are just ongoing reviews that are working through the Planning Commission and staff review process before they make their way to you. Each of them has offered an extension to continue those through that process. The only one I want to note specifically is the first one at 19 Backton Hill Road. This is a project that was approved a number of years ago. It's being amended. They, as was discussed earlier, they've been sort of waiting on public sewer to become available on Backton Hill Road. So until that project is, comes to fruition, they're going to be extending our review timelines indefinitely. They will have to notify us in writing when they anticipate for that review clock to begin. So essentially, it's on them to reinitiate the time clock once the sewer has been installed.
Is this the paving company?
It's a property owned by Mark Bevavino. There was a couple of GVCO was in this property. They had proposed recently to do a large addition to it. Now they're proposing to do a couple of multi-tenant spaces.
Oh, this is the building, okay, where the basketball place was.
It's going
Yep,
right
got
next. It's right next to where the new GVCO facility would be.
Yes, okay, I got it, yep. What's 514 Lap Road? That doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah, so that's a small office building at the corner of Lap Road in Old Moore Hall. Again, something that's going back to the Planning Commission next month that may make its way to you. I can send you all the link to some of these plans that are sort of out there. They're all listed on our website, but I can bundle up some links for you guys to take a look at a while. It's a small office building at the corner there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go with all the extensions is fine.
Well, what's this extension is? Okay, we need an extension for the 3-ton that we just did, right?
Right. That's for you to be able to actually act on the resolution.
Okay, so we have to
It's extended
because
beyond
we haven't
where.
got the resolution.
Yeah,
All right,
it's extended beyond where it needs to be, just for easy tracking purposes.
Okay.
Anything unusual with Immaculata?
No, this is for a small, relatively small building for some new science classrooms and labs. They're kind of repurposing some buildings over there. There's no increased enrollment or anything like that. They're just trying to update their labs and bring them into sort of what the modern standards are as part of a couple of their science and nursing programs. It's actually a really interesting project. And so we can provide some more information on that. There's been a couple of articles recently in newspaper about it. So should be a really good project for them. Low impact on the community itself, but good for the campus, good for the university.
Okay.
Hey, Zach, can you share your screen, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
Donna, are there any public comments pertaining to any of these?
No, there's not.
Okay. Rich, how about if we entertain a motion on all
Sure.
of the extension of times. You can read them. And we'll just
Yep.
call it.
Motion to accept extension of time for 19 Backland Hill Road indefinite, 514 Lap Road till January 31st, 2021, 400 3-ton road till January 31st, 2021, and the Science Pavilion at Immaculata University till January 31, 2021.
Do I have a second, Sue?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we move on to any public comments that might exist for any item that we have not discussed on the agenda.
Yes, Deb Mobile has one. Go ahead, Deb.
I just had a couple of questions and a comment. Thank you very much for opening this up to the public. I know it's a lot of work, but it's a lot easier to follow when you can see everything going on. I do have a question. Are all the meetings, including the planning commissioners meeting, going to be opened up in the same format?
I don't think we've made a decision on that.
Okay, well, I would, considering my reaction to the last planning commission meeting, I would respectfully ask that that be considered. And that brings me to my next question is it still, or tentatively, they were to meet to discuss Bishop Tube at the planning commission meeting next week, which I am assuming means that you're going to be scheduling your discussion for it in December. Is that typically how it works?
I think we're not on till January.
January. Yeah.
Until January?
The applicants offered an extension through January. We can discuss that as in the build up to the meeting, but usually it's a two-part visit to the board, so that would begin in December likely.
Okay, so
Those agendas haven't been set yet.
decision would be January, but they might be presenting in and have information in December. I got that right? Thank you
Right,
so
potentially.
much. And thank you for working so late for those great big salaries. Take care.
All right. Anyone else?
No, it doesn't look like it. Nope.
Okay. On the consent agenda, why don't I go ahead and just read that, folks, and we can call them all out together.
I'm not going to approve A, so
Right,
leave
right.
A off.
I'm sorry?
Leave A off.
Correct. Let me finish here. Excluding item A, which is going to be taken out for some adjustments going forward. So I'll read the consent agenda to be voted on. Ratify payments of bills of $1,200,614.86 for October of 2020. Approve the quote from Guardian Tracking for annual subscription and implementation fee for employee performance management software for the police and civilian employees for $4,233. And an assignment of Chester County Preservation Partnership Program grant from Natural Lands to East Whiteland Township with pertaining to the Spring Ridge property. And assignment of Chester County Preservation Partnership Programs for Natural Lands to East Whiteland Township for the Balderson property. Sue, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any other business anyone has?
Monkey business.
Okay, folks, thank you for everyone's help tonight. And we will see
Can I-
you next month.
Can I cut in for a second?
Sure.
And two requests for maybe some help. One that's very important to me. Plainbrook Road has become an absolute raceway. Just recently, the accident involving the parked mail truck, and I can give you another example here. About a week ago, I was pulling out of my driveway, and a very nice gentleman stopped to let me come out. And as I was backing out, two cars raced around him going up the road. 35 miles an hour has become a joke on Plainbrook. And I'm not sure what the solution is, but I guess before somebody really gets hurt with one of us coming out of our driveways, I'd love to put big divots in the road, but to slow them down. But maybe when we put the pipes in for the sewers, it'll slow them down for a little bit. But if there's some action you guys can take to help us on Plainbrook with, it's between Lancaster Avenue and Swedesford. It's amazing. The second area is not as much of a personal concern, except that I travel back Backton Hill Road. It's very hard to see people on the trail when you're driving back there. And I've seen, I don't know how many people almost get clobbered. I slowed down, and the other day I almost had a bicycle run into the side of my car. And I don't know, again, whether you can put mirrors up or something, or somehow, emphasize either the car stop, which I'm not sure how safe it is close to Swedesford, or bigger stop signs for people on the trail, just so somebody doesn't get hurt and all. And I guess the last thing, thanks for allowing me to be here tonight. It was really a very informative meeting. God bless you all.
Thank you, Ray.
Thanks, Ray, for showing up.
You're a very polite complainer. We appreciate it.
Ray, if I
do it
could,
anytime.
Ray, if I could, I'm the chief of police, so I will take your suggestions for Plainbrook Road under consideration. We'll look at it and see if there's anything we could do. Maybe put out some signs, the electronic billboards. They help once in a while, and maybe do some enforcement. And your trail crossing is, I know the county trails have been looking at that. They've been asking us for a little bit of information a couple of times because they've had a couple near misses. And actually, I know we had somebody who actually did run into the side of a car there.
Yeah.
Bike. So, so we hear you, and you're correct.
If I can add, since you came on, what a professional group of officers you have. I get to see them every now and then as I'm around town, Abel or whoever, and how professional and how great they are. God bless you guys.
Thank you.
It's great to hear. Thank
We
you.
got a good team.
Yep.
Team.
Yes, we do.
Woo! All right. Good night, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.